Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com. In today's podcast, I wanted to discuss something that I think is going to be impacting 2023 in general, is the economy. And that's sort of a catch-all phrase, but the way it impacts Big Four people is promotions, raises, hiring, for people just joining, which is probably a lot of people listening to this podcast. They're going to worry about their compensation, their start date. And I think whether or not the economy is going to get better, the impacts of 2022 are already impacting the Big Four accounting firms and their how do I say this? I want to use a joke, but I also don't want to say anything offensive. But I guess the nice way I'll say it is that they follow the herd. They never really come up with any new ideas themselves. They always follow what other companies do. And what a lot of other companies are doing right now is layoffs. Amazon, Microsoft just announced thousands and thousands of layoffs. The financial services companies are laying off a lot of people. But a lot of these companies are preemptively doing these layoffs. Or they just got too bloated, or they just hired way too many people. Now, the Big Four accounting firms, as far as I've heard, have not been doing any major layoffs. They might be laying off executive assistants, things like that, but that's been happening over the past couple of years anyway. But as far as just regular people, I haven't heard of any layoffs. And if there are going to be layoffs in the Big Four accounting firms, it's going to be consultants first, especially consultants in the private equity markets. Private equity is getting hit really hard right now just because private equity isn't making a ton of moves. Now, if central banks around the world ease up on interest rates, then we might see that change. But as of right now, I think venture capital, private equity is going to not be going through as many deals as they used to. M&A, I could say the same thing for M&A, although companies are still sitting on big cash reserves. So, I mean, M&A will be okay, but it's not going to be humongous growth like it was. And just consulting in general at the Big Four accounting firms is going to decrease. So if there were going to be layoffs, I think it would be consulting first and then audit second. Just because I do see audit getting impacted by this, because you have to think of the companies doing the layoffs. There are a lot of tech companies. They're laying off a ton of employees. Their operations might be going down, so they don't need as big as an audit team as they used to in the past, or they're just going to push back on their audit fees. So that's something that I could see there. So I think that's the way it would work from a layoff perspective. Now, as far as compensation, it's going to be a tough year. Now, I think the Big Four accounting firms have all been doing well for this half year, and KPMG still had really good results. Because you have to remember their results include part of, further into the year than the other Big Four accounting firms, because they don't report until September 30th, and KPMG still had strong results. So I think that, and based on what I've heard, the Big Four accounting firms have done well in the first half of the year. But I think they're all expecting something bad to happen in the end of the year. And I think a lot of them expect to break even or have a little bit of growth. And I think it'll be surprising if they actually have good growth. I think that'll catch them off guard. And I think some of them might still have good growth, because I think people are expecting a really, really bad downturn. And I don't know if that happens at the beginning of the year, the second half of the year. But one thing that happened was, for sure, EY had a mid-year bonus that they were supposed to do. It was supposed to be the first year. They were implementing a lot of things, like the mid-year bonus, early promotions, etc. They're no longer doing that. They're also easing back on hiring freeze, somewhat of a hiring freeze. The other Big Four accounting firms are also going to be freezing some hiring, just because to prevent layoffs, you ease up on hiring, they're still going to be hiring key people. They're just not going to be doing it at the rate that they were. And they're going to wait for results to come in before they go crazy on more hiring. And then as far as start dates are going to be pushed back to key times. That's the other thing too. And then hiring packages for new hires are going to most likely be reduced, or like I said, the start date will be pushed back. So that's one thing about starting in this time frame right now, is it's going to be a little bit of uncertainty. But that's how it was during the financial crisis as well. During the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, the big four accounting firms, they changed start dates, they changed starting packages, they changed the compensation, sign-on bonuses, etc. So if you're expecting a sign-on bonus, that may go away. They may trim your compensation package. But the 2023 is going to be an interesting year for everybody, because the stock market hasn't been doing well in 2022. Companies are laying people off left and right. Earnings are being revised. Interest rates are going up, or interest rates are staying at a high rate. We have inflation as well around the world. And so all these things are going to put pressure on the big four accounting firms' bottom line. And another interesting thing you might see this year is PwC pass Deloitte in revenues, or get really close, because Deloitte's almost purely consulting at this point. And those consulting revenues should come down a little bit. And then PwC has revenues in audit and tax that are larger than Deloitte. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And as far as promotions go, who knows what's going to happen there? It all depends on how this goes. But the one thing I don't see promotions being impacted that much is because the big four accounting firms will do during this time period is they'll promote people to incentivize them to stay, but then their raises will not be that good. Where in a promotion year, many people would get, multiple 10% of their base. So it'd be 20 something percent on their base. And what the big four will do is they're going to promote you and give you 10%, 12% as a raise during the promotion, versus a really high promotion bump or a really high bonus. So I don't think promotions will be impacted too much. But it's going to be an interesting year. There's going to be more to come. We'll see what the big four do, because during COVID, they let so many people go, and then they ended up hiring a ton of people right after that. But it's going to be an interesting year. So make sure to subscribe to this podcast and stay tuned. Thanks for listening.